Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Day 4 action of the Casting Colosseum. My name is Adam Takata, a.k.a. The Snake. With me is Nathan Revere, a.k.a. Dynatropia, and down on the tournament floor, your Hex reporter, Vinay Balaga, a.k.a. Alucard, and we are going to bring you some exciting matchups today in the Casting Colosseum. First match is going to be a grudge match, a rematch, if you will, from Casting Colosseum number 2. It's going to be Sithos versus ThrawnOmega, and let's take a look at Sithos' player card. He hails from Arizona. He is 27 years old. He considers himself a control player, and even though he hasn't placed very well in tournaments, he's looking to make his mark in the future. And a funny fact about Sithos, he is a PC and hardware junkie and obsessed with the technical specs and builds. Let's take a look at the deck that Sithos is piloting today. It is a Wild Diamond deck. Troops in this deck are 2 Charge Colossus, 4 Arborean Rootfather, 3 Balthazar, 4 Crocosar, 4 Angel of Dawn, 4 Eternal Sage, 2 Succulent Klecodons, 3 Puck the Dreambringer, 3 Howling Brave round out his troops. And as far as actions in the deck, playing 4 Chlorophilia, 2 Pride's Fall, 2 Shard Calls, and rounding out his resource pool is 4 Shards of Life. He is playing the champion Rutherford Banks with a starting life of 23, or health of 23, with a double diamond threshold. He can pay 7 charge power to put target troop from your crypt into play.
Now, this is a deck at this point that needs no introduction. Not only has Sithos played this once before, this is the deck he used to sail to his first victory against ThrawnOmega, but also this is a deck that managed to ace completely 12-0, the 12th IQ as piloted by Shadow Lucian. The deck focuses on large threats that will not be taken off the board. Things like an Arborean Rootfather with Spell Shield or a Charged Colossus. There's a nifty little combo here in the deck which sort of gives it its character, what makes it different from other versions of this deck that we've seen before. Charge Colossus, when it comes into play, you gain 8 charges. Combine that with Rutherford Banks' champion ability for 7 charges. You can put target troop from your crypt into play. So if a Charge Colossus somehow ends up in your crypt, you can bring it back and it'll immediately give you the resources, the charges that you need to do the combo all over again if your opponent can somehow remove that Colossus. One final comment about what makes this deck so special and or different is that most of the troops in the deck do give some life gains and health gain. So Succulent Klecodon, Balthazar, the Arborean Rootfather often has life drain in there. Lots of ways to gain health, and it's about staying the course until you have those impossible to remove threats.
On the opposite side of the board is ThrawnOmega. He hails from Winterfell, a.k.a. Minnesota. He's 29 years old. He says controls is for wimps, and he's all about the beatdowns. His tournament history, he's won a set 1 draft with a mono wild Briar Legion Dream. A funny fact about a ThrawnOmega, he's a massive Star Wars fan with over 100 novels and is an Xbox Live addict with a 250,000 gamer score. Let's take a look at the deck that ThrawnOmega is piloting today. It is Glorious Elven Empire. Troops that comprise his deck are 4 Arborean Rootfather, 4 Tempestuous Blade Dancer, 3 Ashwood Blade Master, 4 Wild Root Dancer, 4 Ageless Troubadours, and 3 Emberleaf Duelist. Actions in this deck, he's playing 4 Crackling Bolt, 4 Burn, 4 Wild Growth, and 3 Smash to the Ground. His champion is Mightsinger Alindria with a starting health of 21, requires a double wild threshold to pay 5, will create a Gigantosaur and put it into your hand.
So he might love the beatdown, but it was him last time that was smacked to the ground. We'll see if Thrawn can turn it around here today. And in fact, I'm getting a little bit of deja vu. This is the exact same deck he used last time. Did not manage to win. Let's see if he can turn it around here today. Let's look at the deck and break down what he will want to do. As mentioned, he is focused on aggression, and this deck will get that aggression by ramping up to large threats, things like the Tempestuous Blade Dancer or Arborean Rootfather, of course, are threats on the top end. But even Ashwood Blademaster, this glorious Elven Empire, is a tribal deck focusing on elves and troops that gain benefit from having other elves in the deck.
All right, so it looks like we're going to head down to the tournament floor for our rematch, our grudge match between Sithos and ThrawnOmega. We'll take a look at opening hands for both players. Sithos with double diamond, a shard of savagery, chlorophylla, shard call, Arborean Rootfather, and Crocosaur. On the opposite side for ThrawnOmega is a ruby shard, wild growth. Decides to go ahead and mulligan. He goes down to 1 resource. Will mulligan again, down to 5 cards, no resources. A mulligan again, down to 4 cards. Really tough spot, sitting with a ruby shard, wild shard, Arborean Rootfather, and Tempestuous Blade Dancer.
Oh no. I mean, I've seen people come out of pretty much this tough a spot, but having half of your opponent's cards starting out is a pretty big setback.
Especially for an aggro deck. We'll play a wild shard, turn passes back over to Sithos, who plays who draws an Arborean Rootfather. Will play a diamond shard. Looks like he is going to shard call, look for a resource. Going for the wild. Definitely wants to make sure he has the threshold for Crocosaur. We'll pass a turn back over to ThrawnOmega. Will play a ruby shard. He has a Arborean Rootfather in hand. He's going to cycle it and draw a card. And that card is a shard. It's a wild shard.
Yeah, I think, again, whenever you're playing a deck like Sithos is running, whenever you're playing against it, you need to hunt them down and hit them hard before they get to their large troops, because they are pretty much impossible to remove for the shards that Thrawn is running.
Sithos' draw is a wild shard. We'll play Chorophilia, pass the turn back over to ThrawnOmega. His draw is a burn. We'll play a wild shard, sitting at double wild, single ruby threshold, 3 resources, and looks like he's going to pass the turn back over to Sithos. His draw is a shard of life. Trying to decide what's his line of play. He definitely wants to make sure he gets up to 3 wild threshold for the Crocosaur. So it looks like he is going to play that wild. We'll go up to 4 resources, triple wild, single diamond threshold. No play for Sithos, and he'll pass the turn back over to ThrawnOmega. His draw is a ruby shard. Now going up to 4 resources, double ruby, double wild.
It's kind of a waiting game for Sithos at this point. There are no threats on Thrawn's side of the board yet, and Sithos has all of the resource he needs to play those Arborean Rootfathers. I mean, he's sitting on the 7, so looks like he doesn't care. He's like, whatever, I'll I'll find more things to play.
At the end of ThrawnOmega's turn, cycles 2 Rootfathers, finds a Pridefall and a Shard Call. His draw is a Shard of Savagery. Will play a Diamond Shard, and it's going to play Shard Call for a resource. Now he definitely has those Eternal Sages, so the shards that he gains now could be useful later for the Eternal Sage. Looks like he's going to select Sapphire.
And with there, I have to feel that Sithos must have had something in particular that he was looking for. Otherwise, why toss troops that you have in your hand and can play back into your deck?
ThrawnOmega will play a Wild Shard. Tempestuous Blade Dancer attempting to go to the board, but Sithos will respond with a Pridefall. Tempestuous Blade Dancer, not long for this world, will visit the crypt and passes the turn back over to Sithos. There is the Eternal Sage. And he'll play that out. He still hasn't played a resource, so he's got a couple options. Looks like he's going to play the Shard of Life. He'll be able to choose between Diamond and Wild Threshold. Will choose Diamond now with triple Diamond, triple Wild Threshold, and we'll pass the turn over to ThrawnOmega.
So playing shards with an Eternal Sage on the board is actually a strategic decision. Eternal Sage will give you a different effect depending on what threshold you gain.
Ruby Shard is drawn for Thrawn. Will play it now at 6 resources. Use his champion power to put a Giganosaur in hand. Has a burn and crackling bolt online that he can use. That'll do 5 damage. He can try to take out the Eternal Sage, and it looks like that is what he's going to do. Crackling bolt will do 3, burn will do 2. Eternal Sage is gone.
But this is where the strength of Rutherford Banks really becomes apparent. Sithos is at 6 charges with 1 more resource down. You'll be able to bring back that Eternal Sage. It's almost like it was never removed in the first place.
Draw for Sithos is a Crocosaur. Will play a Shard of Savagery, going for that Ruby Threshold. Still has 6 resources. Going to use the champion power, and here comes the Eternal Sage back on the board for Sithos. Eternal pass back over to ThrawnOmega. His draw is an Ageless Troubadour.
The Eternal Sage is why we have things like the Shard of Savagery in this deck. It's specifically for that extra threshold tech.
Sithos will play a Wild Shard, power up the Eternal Sage. It'll be an 8/8. We go to attack phase. 8 damage inbound to Thrawn. We'll see if he blocks. If not, he'll go down to 13 health.
Blocking is a risk. I mean, on the one hand, you're preventing yourself from taking 8 damage. On the other, Ageless Troubadour will give Thrawn that extra resource he needs to play the Gigantosaur guaranteed next turn.
Eternal Sage connects with Thrawn, takes him down to 13 health. Turn passes back over to Thrawn, draws a resource. He does have a temporary resource due to the Ageless Troubadour. Will play Gigantosaur. So a 7/7 troop on the board for Thrawn. And we'll see if he's going to swing in with the Ageless Troubadour to try to pick away at Sithos' health total.
Swinging in will be able to deal 2 damage, but it is a risk because if Sithos has another wild threshold or even the Sapphire, which we know we have in his hand, he'll be able to use Eternal Sage tech and force damage through against Thrawn.
Sithos down to 25 health after that attack. Turn passes back over to Sithos, who draws a Balthazar. Will now play a Sapphire Shard, so he's going to lock down the Gigantosaur. With that ability, it will not be able to ready in the next turn. He's playing Balthazar, which he's going to gain 5 health, draw 5 cards.
Oh, that was a crazy pickup. The Howling Brave, it's whenever you gain threshold, not whenever you play a shard. So he's going to be able to buff up that Sage twice.
So both Howling Braves will be played. Both will generate a wild threshold. That is an 11/11 Eternal Sage swinging in at Thrawn. Nothing he can do. He's going to go down to 2 health, and ThrawnOmega is in trouble. Turn passes back over to ThrawnOmega. His draw is a Wild Brute Dancer.
Oh, interesting. Playing the shard before tossing down that Wild Brute Dancer might have been a little bit of a slip up there. Wild Brute Dancer does give pluses to a troop, another troop, as long as you play a shard when it's on the board.
So he tosses the table. The match goes to Sithos, and we will go into reserves. Let's take a look at Sithos reserves in this matchup, playing a single Cerebral Domination, 2 Pride's Fall, 3 Carnosaurus, 2 Turbulence, 2 Scorn of Oberons, and 4 Crash of Beasts. What are some options for Sithos if he wants to reserve some cards in?
I feel like if he's feeling pressured by Thrawn, removal is a solid option. And the 2 removal cards that Sithos has access to are either Carnosaurus or Pride's Fall. We haven't seen any flying from Thrawn, so Turbulence is a nice fit. Carnosaurus will be able to battle, kill most of the elves that we've seen, and Pride's Fall is great for things that are outside of Carnosaurus' range. If they have 4 defense or greater, you can just knock them down a peg.
And let's take a look at ThrawnOmega's reserves, playing 4 Crocosaur, 3 Nature Rains, 4 Turbulence, and 4 Vandalize. You'd have to think that those Nature Rains are probably important reserve cards that ThrawnOmega could consider.
Oh yeah, Nature's Rains is excellent. It gets rid of artifacts like those sages that we've seen, as well as Charge Colossus. It's pretty solid tech against Sithos' deck. I'm also somewhat surprised that Crocosaur isn't main deck, although I imagine part of that is for the theme and the elven tribal consistency. But Crocosaur is pretty strong in this meta for a reason. It kills most things, including those sages.
All right, so we're going into game number 2. Sithos leads 1-0. ThrawnOmega will go first. We'll take a look at opening hands for both players. Sithos with triple wild, Angel of Dawn, Crocosaur, Carnosaurus, and Howling Brave on ThrawnOmega's side. Double Ruby, double wild, Crocosaur, Tempestuous Blade Dancer, and Wild Root Dancer. We'll play a wild shard, pass a turn over to Sithos.
And it looks like that Carnosaurus did come in. Oh, that that top deck. No.
Draw for Sithos was an Angel of Dawn. Unfortunately, no diamond threshold, so no free Angel of Dawn. Turn will pass back over to ThrawnOmega. His draw is a wild shard. We'll play a wild shard now at 2 resources, double wild, and we'll pass the turn over to Sithos.
That's got to be heartbreaking. The Angel will come into play for free, as Snake mentioned, if you have a diamond shard, and it can be something that can just carry away the game. We saw that actually last Friday.
Wild Shard is played for Sithos. Will swing in with the Howling Brave. That'll ping Thrawn, take him down to 20. Turn will pass back over. Draw for Thrawn is a Crackling Bolt. We'll play a Ruby Shard now at 3 resources, and we'll see the Wild Root Dancer join the field.
This is a tense moment. We know what's in Sithos' hand, but Thrawn has no idea that he's about to lose that Wild Root Dancer. Sithos does have a Carnosaurus, and as we mentioned earlier, it can battle. Let's see if he does so now.
Draw for Sithos is a Shard Call. Will play that Carnosaurus and activate its ability to battle. So that Wild Root Dancer and Carnosaurus are both going to go into the crypt. He'll play a Wild Shard at a single resource remaining, but no diamond. He's going to swing in, ping Thrawn again. This will bring him down to 19 health. Sithos will pass the turn back over to Thrawn. His draw is a Wild Root Dancer, returns.
Unfortunately, Wild Root Dancer cannot target itself, so Thrawn will need another troop to make use of the Wild Root Dancer's ability. And that will open him up to Crocosaur.
Wild Root Dancer is played. He's going to play a Ruby resource. Unfortunately, it will not be able to target itself, as Dinotropia has mentioned. Turn will pass back over to Sithos. His draw is a Shard of Life, diamond threshold, which he is looking for. He now has, thanks to the Shard of Life. He's at 3 resources. Will Shard Call.
It was somewhat of an unfortunate pickup for Thrawn's. George Sithos is over the moon. Getting that diamond will let him play everything that he needs in hand.
So he's going to grab another wild resource. He does have Internal Sage in hand. We're going to go to attack phase. No attack from Sithos. He'll pass the turn back over to Thrawn. His draw is an Ashwood Blade Master. Now, he does have the opportunity to go to 5 with the wild resource in hand, but it looks like he is going to go and play the Ashwood Blade Master and play a resource.
Learning from his last game, going to make sure you sequence those plays correctly. Getting that Ashwood Blade Master buffed up is pretty important.
4/3 Ashwood Blade Master now with Swift Strike on Thrawn's side. Still has 2 open resources. He can decide to slow things down here a little bit for Sithos.
Yeah, you can see him kind of hovering over that Crackling Bolt. Does he want to kill the Howling Brave? He does not know Sithos has a shard in hand, or perhaps he does. That was from Shard Call. So if he's remembering correctly, he should know that Sithos will have 5 resources regardless.
Does not Crackling Bolt. We do go to attack phase. Wild Root Dancer will hit Sithos, bringing him down to 23. Activation of Thrawn's champion ability will put a Giganosaur in his hand. Will pass the turn over to Sithos. His draw is a Charged Colossus. Will play a Wild Shard now at 5 resources. And Crocosaur will come down and battle 2 troops.
There it is. That is why Crocosaur is a meta-defining card in set 3. It forces your opponent to think very carefully about what you play, when you play it, and try to make sure you keep only one major threat on the board instead of diversifying and going wide.
Howling Brave will ping Thrawn, bring him down to 18 health. Turn will pass back over to Thrawn. His draw is an Arborean Rootfather.
It's a silver lining is that Thrawn also has a Crocosaur of his own. So if Sithos plays his Eternal Sage or even an Angel of Dawn, there could be a little bit of payback in the future.
Yeah, so we have the Temptress Blade Dancer played from Thrawn swinging in. That will bring Sithos down to 19 health. Turn will pass back over to Sithos. His draw is an Arborean Rootfather. Sithos has to decide whether he wants to play the Sage or the Angel. What would you do in this situation, Dino?
It's a little bit tough. Angel does have the advantage of being a duplicate troop, so not only does Sithos have 2 of them, but also it has flight which is evasion, so you can force damage through. Eternal Sage, however, once you have shards, is a little bit more powerful.
Sithos will play the Angel Turn, will pass back over to Thrawn. His draw is an Arborean Rootfather. This is a good value trade for our deal for Thrawn. If he plays the Crocosaur, which he does, he'll be able to eliminate both troops on Sithos' side and keep the Crocosaur.
Yeah, no, it's actually really nice, and that Crocosaur, as well as the Tempestuous Blade Dancer, can force damage through against another Angel if Sithos were to play that, or Eternal Sage.
We go to attack phase for Thrawn. We'll swing in for 4. This is going to bring Sithos down to 15. First time that Sithos is now below health total for this matchup. He's going to play Eternal Sage. He's looking at his charge power, only has 5. He'll pass a turn back over to Thrawn. His draw is a Turbulence. That's a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, so he did, in fact, side those in. Turbulence, was mentioning during the reserve portion that Turbulence didn't have very many targets, but I forgot completely about those Angels of Dawn. So really great to have right now.
Thrawn will cycle on Arborean Rootfather, finds a Ruby Shard, so he's now at 6 resources, 4 active. We will go to attack phase. We see the Crocosaur swinging in. This would bring Sithos down to 10 if he takes it, and he does, down to 10 health for Sithos. 4 resources open. We'll pass a turn back over to Sithos. Draw for him is a Carnosaur.
This next turn is going to be really important. Does Sithos play a second Eternal Sage, or does he play the Angel of Dawn? If he plays the Angel, he might get blown out pretty hard.
Looks like a second Eternal Sage will join the battlefield for Sithos, trying to decide if he wants to attack. Does not. Will pass the turn back over to Thrawn. His draw. It's a Nature's Reigns. He's reserved those in. What a pickup for Thrawn.
That's amazing. Now, it looks like he's going to use it right away, but he could save this and get a 2-for-1 by swinging in with the Crocosaur.
He could have, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit hasty, but it's got to feel good, you know, forcing Sithos to go down to 5 or lose his entire board.
Here comes a Crocosaur in for 5. Sithos having to decide if he wants to take it. He's going to go down to 5 health, and with 4 open resources, going to pass the turn. Sithos' draw is another Eternal Sage.
He's printing these things.
And he's going to play it. So deja vu from the previous turn. Sithos will play that second Eternal Sage. Turn will pass back over to Thrawn. His draw is a burn.
That's lethal. He has Crackling Bolt and burn. No more troops required. Is this the GG? Does he go for it?
No resources open, no way to save himself. A Crackling Bolt will do 3 damage to Sithos. The burn will finish this up, and Thrawn has tied this matchup 1-1 against Sithos in this grudge match from the Casting Colosseum day number 2. Now we're going back to reserves and taking a look at our options. Again, is there any other changes that Sithos should make? I know he definitely didn't get the resources he needed in that second matchup, but is there any other changes you think Sithos might want to consider?
Well, before that, I just want to say it's got to feel great for Thrawn. Last time he was shut out completely, a flawless loss, if you will, flawless victory for Sithos. So being able to eke out at least one, keep in the running, must feel excellent. As far as sideboards are concerned, Pridefall and Carnosaurus, those are the ones that I would look for. Turbulence is not really a great card against Thrawn, although Scorn of Oberon does have some utility if you're looking at the Blade Masters. Blade Masters can give all elves +1 attack, and he can do that as many times as he wants for 3 resources. Scorn of Oberon could put a crimp in that plan.
Let's take a look back at ThrawnOmega's reserves. We saw those Nature Reigns come in. We saw the Turbulence come in. And Crocosaur, so he's definitely utilizing his reserves really well.
Mm-hmm. Those removals were key. They've really, really helped. Part of the danger of some of these removals is that they are very specific. If Thrawn hadn't drawn the Nature's Reigns at the right time, instead drew, say, a second turbulence, he could have been in a lot of trouble. So it will depend a little bit on the numbers, the ratios which he's putting these removals in. But by and large, solid reserve decisions on Thrawn's part.
So we're going to head back down to the tournament floor for this matchup between ThrawnOmega and Sithos. Both players are tied at 1 game apiece. The winner here will take all. Sithos will have the option to play first, and he does. We'll take a look at opening hands for both players. For Sithos, looking at Triple Diamond, a Wild Shard, Shard Call, Soul Marble, and Puck. We didn't see Puck in the first 2 games, so I'm sure Sithos happy to see that. On the opposite side for Thrawn, sitting at a Wild Shard, Smash to the ground, Crackling Bolt, Double Boring Rootfather decides to go ahead and mulligan down to 6. We'll keep that hand with Double Ruby Shard, Wild Shard, Nature's Rain, Burn, and Crackling Bolt. Sithos will play a Diamond Shard and Shard Call.
So the natural enemy of removal is Soul Marble. Once you get 10 counters on it, you can transform it into a Soul Armaments, which gives all troops +2/+2 Steadfast and Spell Shield. Fortunately for Thrawn, Thrawn does have an answer to the Soul Marble sitting in hand.
With Shard Call, Sithos will grab a Wild Shard. Turn will pass back over to Thrawn. He'll play a Ruby Shard after drawing an Emberleaf Duelist. Turn will pass back over to Sithos. His draw is a Chlorophilia. We'll play a Wild Shard. And looks like he's deciding to try an early ramp or early Soul Marble. Decides on Chlorophilia. So that'll play a Wild Shard from his deck. Now at 3 resources, 1 active, will pass the turn back over to Thrawn.
Yeah, I like that line of play. He gets the Soul Marble out a little bit slower, but next turn he'll be able to play both the Soul Marble and Puck the Dreambringer.
Draw for Thrawn is a Wild Shard. We'll play out an Emberleaf Duelist, pass the turn, and we'll see what Sithos' draw is. It is a Wild Shard. We'll play a Diamond now at 4 resources. Looks like Soul Marble is going to be online. He does have 2 open resources, which he can use to either play Puck or pump into the Soul Marble. Looks like he is electing not to play the Puck, and will pass the turn over to Thrawn.
Interesting. Probably saving it, making sure that, if he draws into some of these 7 drops or 8 drops, we'll be able to get a little bit of a nudge and get those out.
Crocosaur is the draw for Thrawn. He will play a Wild Shard. We go into attack phase. This is 2 damage. Looks like Sithos is going to activate the rest of his resources to pump Soul Marble up to 2 counters. We'll take 2 damage, go down to 21 health.
So Thrawn proved himself to be a little bit hasty in the past. We'll see if he sits on the Nature's Reigns this time. One of the best things he can do, in my opinion, is to hold on to this and force Sithos to spend a lot of his resources on Soul Marble counters, then destroy it at the last second so that Sithos loses a whole bunch of tempo.
Shard of Life is the draw for Sithos. Will play a Wild Shard, and it looks like to pass the turn back over to Thrawn. His draw is a Ruby Shard. He'll play a Ruby Shard now at 4 resources, double Wild, double Ruby Threshold.
Now,
we're going to it.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're going to attack phase, going to do 2 damage. Sithos going to pump 5 more resources into Soul Marble. That'll bring the counters up to 7. Sithos' life total will go down to 19. And Nature's Reign will take out that Soul Marble.
So I was going to say the destruction of the Nature's the Soul Marble with Nature's Reigns actually has to be very calculated, because if you let Sithos get his counters up too high, you actually have a choice of either Soul Armaments or Soul Cavalry. And if you choose Soul Cavalry, that will give you a 6/6 spell shielded troop, which would then be immune to the Nature's Reigns.
Turn passes back over to Sithos. Shard of Life is the draw. We'll play a Diamond Shard. Puck the Dreambringer is on the field for Sithos. Immediate reaction from Thrawn is a burn, and that will remove Puck, send him to the crypt. Turn will pass back over to ThrawnOmega. His draw is a Ruby Shard. We'll play a Ruby now at 5 resources. Sitting with Crocosaur, Crackling Bolt in hand, will activate champion ability, create a Gigantosaur. We go to attack phase, 2 damage. Nothing Sithos can do. We'll go down to 17 health.
And Sithos is in a bit of a bind. He needs to draw into one of his troops, and soon.
There is a troop for sure. An Angel of Dawn cast for free off the top for Sithos. Will play a Shard of Life, have a chance at a Wild or Diamond Threshold. Chooses Wild. Has 6 open resources, but only resources left in his hand. He does have the activation of his champion ability. Turn passes back over to Thrawn, who draws a Wild Shard. Will play a Wild Shard. Be at 6 resources.
Picking up that wild shard was really critical for Thrawn. Now he is able to play Crocosaur. So if Sithos does play a second troop, we might see a Crocosaur play.
Emberleaf Duelist will swing in. Sithos looking to side, isn't trying to block, doesn't want to fall for the trap. Will take 2 damage, go down to 15 health. 6
Whoa.
resources remaining for Thrawn, 1 away from Giganosaur.
What a gutsy bluff. Crackling Bolt is not a quick action, so it would have just killed his duelist and there would have been no response.
A second Angel of Dawn for Sithos. Kismet is real. Here we go. 4 damage on combat phase. That'll bring Thrawn down to 17. Double Angel Love for Sithos as the turn passes back over to ThrawnOmega, but he is going to kill them with that Crocosaur. Sad days for Sithos.
Yeah, I mean, there is a silver lining for Sithos. He does have those 7 charges. He will be able to bring those angels back, but Thrawn is looking like he has a ton of pressure. Gigantosaur can possibly come down next turn as well.
So a combat phase, Emberleaf Duelist will swing in. That'll bring Sithos down to 13 health. Turn will pass back over to Sithos, draws a Crocosaur, and looks like he's going to activate his champion ability to play an angel back onto the board. And Wild Shard will be played. It looks like, no, he's going to hold it in hand. Probably a good idea to save it for those Eternal Sages. As we pass back over to Thrawn, his draw is an Ageless Troubadour, so he has a couple options here.
He's got to choose carefully. We know that Sithos has a Crocosaur, but Thrawn should also know that Crocosaur is always a possibility. I believe Sithos is running 4 copies of them, so at any point in time, you play 2 troops, be prepared to lose one or both of them.
And here we go, going to swing in with the Emberleaf Duelist for 2. This will hit. If it does, we'll take Sithos down to 11 health.
Again, cool, smooth plays. Thrawn is not batting an eye, able to bluff Sithos twice now for a total of 4 damage.
Giganosaur is the play for Thrawn. Will turn pass back over to Sithos, draws a Wild Shard. We go to combat. A 4/4 Angel will swing into Thrawn. That'll bring him down to 13. No way for him to block that. He's contemplating playing the Crocosaur, and he is going to play the Crocosaur. And if he targets both troops, he'll lose the Crocosaur. Decides not to lose the Crocosaur. It's the only other troop he has. Sithos will pass a turn back over to Thrawn. His draw is a second Tempestuous Blade Dancer.
You know, Crocosaur is a all or nothing. You either do not battle or you battle 2 troops. So it makes for some really interesting strategic decisions.
So with double Tempestuous Blade Dancer in hand, Ageless Troubadour, and Crackling Bolt, Thrawn with 13 health, Sithos with 11. Looks like he's going to play a Tempestuous Blade Dancer.
Yeah, I like this. I think aggression is definitely the play for Thrawn. Perhaps we'll see a full swing here.
And we do. So Emberleaf Duelist, Giganosaur, and Tempestuous Blade Dancer are inbound, and it looks like Sithos is going to block the Emberleaf Duelist with an Angel of Dawn and the Crocosaur against the Tempestuous Blade Dancer. That is going to reduce the health of the Angel of Dawn or defense down to 2, Crocosaur down to 2. So Thrawn now has a choice between Angel or Crocosaur.
Wow. This is pretty crazy. Does he use that Crackling Bolt on the Crocosaur so that he can have troop superiority next turn? Or does he use the Crackling Bolt on Sithos, who went down to 4? If he gets one more direct damage action, Sithos will be a goner.
So now we're going to see what the target for Crackling Bolt is going to be. The Angel of Dawn. That is the play. And turn will pass back over to Sithos, who draws an Eternal Sage. Very nice draw for Sithos. We'll play that out.
Because he has the Shard of Life, he will be able to bring his health total back up to 8.
We'll play it for the Diamond Threshold. Will gain 4 life, goes up to 8 health. And Sithos deciding if he wants to swing. He is playing against an aggro deck, so there's definitely options for Thrawn. And Sithos realizes that. Will pass the turn back over to ThrawnOmega.
Okay, I think Thrawn needs some of his artifact removal, and soon having both an Eternal Sage and a Crocosaur means if he swings in with Gigantosaur, he will lose it.
Draw for Thrawn is a Wild Shard, sitting with a Temptress Blade Dancer and an Ageless Troubadour. You're right. If he has a way to remove that Eternal Sage, and he has a Temptress Blade Dancer, he can definitely do some damage.
Now, Temptress Blade Dancer does have speed, so playing it from hand is not actually all that important. It might make more sense to play the Ageless Troubadour. On the other hand, Thrawn is one charge away from a second Gigantosaur, so he's got to think really hard about how he wants to develop his board. Sithos could have another Crocosaur, in which case he would lose the Blade Dancer once again.
Temptress Blade Dancer is the play from Thrawn. Still has Ageless Troubadour. Will play that out, so he is going to be top decking from now on, sitting with his board of a Gigantosaur, Temptress Blade Dancer, and Ageless Troubadour.
Yeah, looks like he's going for broke. One thing that should be mentioned, Thrawn does have, unless he sided it out, a Smash to the Ground, which will give target troop plus X equal to the amount of resources he spends. That could be a finishing card for Thrawn in the next couple of turns.
Turn passes back over to Sithos, who gets another Eternal Sage. So double Angels back-to-back, double Sages back-to-back. Kismet is smiling on him. A Wild Shard would activate the ability from both Eternal Sage. He is going to play a Wild Shard. Both Sages will trigger. He's going to target one. Target the same one.
Yikes.
So that's going to be an 11-11 Eternal Sage and a 5-6 Crocosaur on the board. Go to attack phase, Eternal Sage swinging in, 11-11. Thrawn going to have to decide what's going to step in the way of this. No crush, so may see the Troubadour block, and it does. So Ageless Troubadour will go to the crypt, and that will be the end of Sithos' turn as we go back to Thrawn. His top deck is a Wild Shard, and that will get him to another Gigantosaur. As Dinotropia mentioned, will activate his champion ability. We see a second Gigantosaur for Thrawn. So 2 Gigantosaurs and the Temptress Blade Dancer.
It might make sense for Thrawn to put a little bit of pressure. He could swing in with Gigantosaur here, force the chain, and get rid of one of those Eternal Sages. With the double buffs, if Sithos gets any more Diamond Shards or even Wild Shards, it'll be GG for Thrawn. I think he needs to get rid of one of those Eternal Sages, and fast.
A Sapphire would also help Sithos as well. Yeah. So we're going to attack phase from Thrawn. He could swing in with a Gigantosaur. Temptress Blade Dancer, also an option. This is a tough spot for Thrawn.
It's really difficult because depending on, bluffing isn't really an option. Thrawn doesn't have any cards in hand. And, if Sithos blocks efficiently, he could ruin, Thrawn could ruin his own board by attacking in an improper way. So whether or not he swings in with just Gigantosaur or not at all, no, he's being conservative.
No attack from Thrawn. Turn passes back over to Sithos. His draw is a Shard of Savagery. So an activation of Ruby would do damage to opposing troops, but not enough to remove any threat. Wild Shard would act. Oh, actually, yeah, it still wouldn't be enough.
It would actually, well, okay, so if he swings in with the Crocosaur, he could use the Shard of Savagery to surprise kill a Gigantosaur, if that's attractive. Another potential play is to go for the wild buff, as we see him doing. Swing in with a big troop.
So he's going to pump one again. So we see Deja Vu from last round, or last turn, 11-11 Eternal Sage swinging in. Have to think that the Temptress Blade Dancer is going to step in the way. No, going to double block.
Yeah, I think killing the Sage, again, like last time, getting rid of the Sage is so important, because if Thrawn doesn't, as long as Sithos can draw into shards, he doesn't even need threats. Shards are threats with 2 Eternal Sages.
Draw for Thrawn is a Crackling Bolt. Will swing in with a Gigantosaur. We'll see how Sithos blocks. Looks like he's going to double block. Now, the way that now damage here is going to be interesting. Saves is gone.
Getting rid of the Sage seems to be the logical play. Crackling Bolt is one away from killing Crocosaur, so that's unfortunate. Crocosaur will stay on the board.
Draw 4 Sithos is a wild shard. Will play that, is now at 11 resources, 4 on his charge power, and is going to pass the turn back over to Thrawn. His draw is a wild growth.
That top deck, that's huge.
Really is. We're going to go to attack phase. We should see Temptress Blade Dancer swinging in. And if we do, so it's going to be interesting to see how Sithos reacts to this. He's going to immediately block. And we're going to see that wild growth played on the Temptress Blade Dancer. That is a 7/7 crushing steadfast speedster that's going to take out the Crocosaur. That'll take Sithos down to 7 health.
This is huge, quite literally huge. If Sithos does not pull into one of his blockers or one of those prize falls, he could find himself dead as next turn.
He is going to be dead this turn. We'll play a shard, and that will pass the turn over to Thrawn, who has a Crackling Bolt and Temptress Blade Dancer. We go to combat phase. 4 damage from the Temptress Blade Dancer. Going to bring Sithos down to 3. And the Crackling Bolt will win this for ThrawnOmega as he gets revenge on Sithos in this first matchup of the Casting Colosseum, day number 4. Exciting matchup with ThrawnOmega getting his revenge against Sithos. What a great match.
Oh, yeah. Being able to eke out that victory at the last second. It was back and forth up until the final draw. I've got to say that was intense.
And I really like how ThrawnOmega was playing it really smooth, playing real calculated, and playing really aggressive to his name. He definitely was playing aggressive and kept sending that Emberleaf Duelist, until Sithos finally decided to block. And really, you know, the aggressive nature of that deck weighed through and gave Thrawn the victory. So exciting matchup. Again, congratulations to Thrawn for tying that matchup between you and Sithos. And we're going to go down to the tournament floor where Alucard has an interview with our gladiator after suffering that defeat to ThrawnOmega. So let's take it down to the tournament floor to Alucard with Sithos.
All right. Thank you, Snake and Dino. I am here now with Sithos after that very, very intense match. There was a lot of back and forth there. Unfortunately, it looks like Thrawn took that away from you, Sithos, but how are you feeling about it?
You know, I'm okay with it. We played, I believe it was last week, and we played the exact same decks, and it definitely, it felt like a not even matchup power level wise, and he still, you know, I thought that he deserved props for kind of bringing a themed deck. It still had potential to win, so, you know, the fact that he didn't win last week and he came back this week and had his revenge, you know, I can't really be too angry about that. I think he definitely put in the plays and the work, and he earned his victories in those matches, especially after game 1.
Yeah, game 1 was very decisive. He definitely had to mulligan down there to 4. He still put up a little bit of a fight, but you had a lot of the answers there. What do you think was kind of the cards that you felt you needed the most to kind of recover in games 2 and 3 that you didn't find?
You know, I feel like a lot of it was mainly just kind of flooding. I wasn't really drawing a lot of the troops that I wanted to be playing. You know, early in the game, like usually the way the deck is built is that you're supposed to ramp into your big scaries and survive and have your big scary stuff on the board. And it felt like I never really was establishing that board presence with the deck. And part of that is, you know, Thrawn built a deck that has a lot of removal, and he was doing a really good job of removing the things that he needed to. You know, post-combat he could use, you know, burns or crackling bolts to kind of finish off the troops he didn't want to have around to face anymore. So I think he did a really good job of balancing getting rid of my things while keeping his things.
Yeah, we definitely saw a lot of Thrawn bring in a lot of his reserves came into play in this matchup. He had those Crocosaurs in the reserves. He's had Nature Rains. He had Turbulence available. I don't think he actually ended up playing that against some of your Angels of Dawn, but he was prepared for this matchup. What about your reserves? What do you think were your best options here, or did you really have too many?
You know, I was debating about that. I knew that he had some early troops that Carnosaurus would take care of, so I only put in 2 of those. And I think my main problem was that I did bring a soul marble in, and as we saw, he ended up holding up Nature Reigns and basically letting me waste some resources on that, getting rid of that. I think I should have brought in my other 2 Pride's Fall. I think that was my biggest kind of mistake when it came to my reserve options. Other than that, I don't really think there was much I could have done, but I definitely think bringing the other Pride's Falls would have been a smart choice.
Gotcha. So later on this month, we are having our big Hextravaganza tournament for the Casting Colosseum, and I imagine you'll be participating. What do you think you need to do to prepare for that, and bring your best to the table and try to redeem yourself after the loss today?
I think I could use some more constructed practice. I don't necessarily always play constructed on a regular basis, so sometimes I can be kind of rusty with the combinations or the order. Play this card during this phase, follow up with this. It's easy to make small mistakes, and with a deck like this where you're making really important choices, sometimes I can pick. Maybe I played the wrong shard for Eternal Sage, or maybe I should have held back a Carnosaurus to help finish something off. Those little small things that you get through practicing a deck are probably the best kind of thing I should learn. And I think I would also like to kind of maybe have my own deck. We all know that this was a deck that was piloted by one of our IQ winners, Sithos, and I would really like to have kind of my own deck where I could put my stamp on it and say, this is mine.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I wish you luck in the Casting Coliseum and the big tournament going forward. Thanks for joining us here, and we're going to swing it back over to Snake and Dinotropia.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, thanks for that interview with our gladiator Sithos after that exciting matchup between him and ThrawnOmega.